Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OLIFT Podcast, where we discuss educational and relevant topics about Olympic weightlifting. My name is Anton Jefferson.
And I'm JP Nicoletta, and today we're going to play an interview that Anton did with Coach Joe Szymanek of the Doc and Jock podcast, and he is a crossover from CrossFit, and he primarily focuses now on weightlifting, but a lot of remote coaching as well. And Anton, you thought it would be a lot of fun to talk to him, so we hope that everybody enjoys the interview that we did with Coach Joe. And
yeah, stay tuned. We're going to talk about the Nationals coming up soon. It's in my hometown, Chicago. I'm excited about that. We have some interesting things to come at you guys and a lot of great lifting coming up. So be sure to stay tuned, and thanks for listening. And today I have a very special guest. It's Joe from Joe's Barbell. How you doing, Joe?
Fired to be here. Thanks for having me.
Can we start by pronouncing your last name? We just had a little talk about it looks very difficult for me to pronounce. So how do you say that?
The longest and hardest thing I've given my wife is a great Polish last name. So it's good. It's Szymanek, Szymanek. A lot of people, when they see it, say Szymanek. It's actually supposedly a pretty common Polish name. And
the first thing that I want to know is, how do you get started in barbell sports?
It's interesting. It's actually a long story, but we'll try to make it as short as possible. But, I was a kid who grew up in Pennsylvania who loved football. I was a small kid, a fast kid, and I knew that the only way to play football was to get stronger. And I was fortunate enough to fall into a great weight room with a great strength and conditioning coach. I was 120 pounds soaking wet, I think, as a sophomore. And by the time I was a senior, I was 155 pounds soaking wet. But, man, I was strong and fast, and thank goodness I had a good coach who had me squatting, had me power cleaning, had me lifting it. And that's really where the love affair started. I wouldn't have done anything in sports or CrossFit or anything had I not had great strength and conditioning as a high school athlete. My actual only regret is that those coaches didn't take it a step further and say, hey, guess what? You can compete in weightlifting too when you're not playing football. But that's it. Great coaching as a young kiddo, and I've been running with it ever since.
Yeah, I had a very similar start where I started, my first time as a 15-year-old, picking up the barbell and conditioning class where every athlete had to take conditioning. You couldn't take regular PE. You had to learn how to properly lift. It's been a blessing to disguise because moving into college, I was one of the, only guys on the track team who knew how to properly lift in a way. That just helped me with my weightlifting career so far. So that's an awesome tie-in. And I think that's very unique to the U.S., where we learn this more powerlifting, kind of transitional for football kind of style.
And what our coach did, which is great, our high school, the head coach ran the football program in the fall. When the season ended, he turned it over to the strength and conditioning coach, and pretty much he was the head coach. And his only thing was to do barbell stuff. And I think a lot of times I coached high school football for a while, and high school football coaches are an interesting breed of person where you're not going to be able to tell them anything. They're going to have to learn it and do it for themselves, right? So a lot of times it's tough for them to turn that over. And I think when they decide either to go get educated on how to work the barbell or put someone in charge who can do it, people really blossom. I would say this, I wish your program, I was in Texas too for a little bit, and they would have athletic periods. And it was interesting, the athletic kids were taught barbell stuff and strength and conditioning on a higher level. I think the one caveat I'll add to what you're bringing up is I wish schools would take it a step further. Why not have all kids? I really think in terms of PE, what we're seeing with obesity, why not introduce kids to the barbell or a pipe or barbell movements the same way you introduce a basketball, a soccer ball, a jump rope. I think it would do us all a lot better to just train hard and focus on strength a little bit.
Well, like we know, it's not always down to conventional wisdom. Sometimes it boils down to popularity. Basketball is uber popular, and we just got to do everything we can as little guys to continue to make our sport more popularized.
That's right. Talk about it like we're doing right now.
That's right. Let's talk about your background. First, you were in CrossFit, and then you made this transition to weightlifting, which is very common.
Yeah. So after I played college football, and I knew after I graduated college, I was going to go back to my hometown and coach high school football. That's what it was going to do. And anything but that happened. I followed my wife around. She's an active duty physical therapist in the Army. I follow her around. All of a sudden, teaching PE got whittled down to doing strength and conditioning. I ended up being an intern at the University of Hawaii, and then through that, I couldn't afford to be a GA at that point because we started having kiddos. So I walked into a
Yeah.
CrossFit gym, and they let me bring my kiddos to work. They let me train people. They let me train, and that's how I got into CrossFit. And then once we had 3 kids, that dang
Wow.
CrossFit nut was too hard to swallow. So
Yeah.
the only reason I was a good CrossFitter was because I was a decent weightlifter and strong. Got into weightlifting, appeared at a couple nationals, and right now I'm trying to coach on the side a little bit.
That's awesome, man. So you've had a very unique ride. You're in Hawaii.
Yep.
You want to go to the PE teacher. By the way, shout out to all PE teachers. I think you guys have the greatest job in the world. You get to wear sweatpants every day to work. You get 3 months off in the summer. And you can come to work, hopefully not hungover or anything like that, like my gym teacher was sometimes. But you could be like, yeah, we're gonna play, flag football today, just because, or kickball. So you're coaching at a CrossFit gym.
Yep.
What's your first impression of CrossFit? Coming from this, sports performance and weightlifting background from football.
That's a crazy thing because my wife, she introduced me to CrossFit in probably about 2008, 2007. She came back when she was in PT school in San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
One of her classmates had the whole class go to a CrossFit gym and meet this guy, and she comes back in, you should do this, you'd love it. And again, at the time, I'm coaching high school football, and I'm like, I'm not going to have somebody else teach me how to squat. I know what I'm doing. I played college football, I know what's going on, but long story short, I get into that gym in around 2009. 2 years later, after her begging me to go, I finally walked into it because I was looking for something to do in the summertime. And honestly, my first impression was really positive because what got me was I saw people, for one, working hard, and I remembered it was the first time I had seen a power clean in probably 2 or 3 years. And I would do it a little bit in the high school gyms working with the kiddos. But man, when I saw regular people doing it in a CrossFit setting, I was turned on. To hit the bear complex with a 65-year-old woman next to you, there was something about that fired me up. And it was cool. It was the first time to realize, hey, people want to work hard. They want to sling the barbell around, and it fired me up. So that was my first impression right there. I thought it was just cool to watch people work hard and do these moves that made me a successful high school and college football player.
You're competing as well, right?
I was very fortunate. What ended up happening, we road tripped across the country before we moved to Hawaii. So we did this big road trip from Texas to North Carolina to San Francisco, and all along the way I did a CrossFit level 1. I was meeting coaches, we were going to different gyms, and when we landed in Hawaii, I gathered up enough information to know that I wanted to train with this girl named Elise Umeda because she had gone to the games. I watched her do the games that year. I believe that might have been in 2009, 2010. I figured if I'm going to go to Hawaii, I'm going to train with the best CrossFitter, and she was the best CrossFitter on the island. So I worked out with her at a gym called Hard Ass Fitness. Kimo Kockelman was the head coach there, and then Elise branched off and did her own thing at CrossFit 808, and I was just fortunate enough to tag along with her, and honestly, 2 other amazing girls, Kyla Evers and Brandy Richardson. Brandy Richardson right now is a grid league athlete, and she's like 6'2", 180 pounds, former basketball player. I mean, a strong chick. These 3 girls, I'll tell you right now, Anton, if you follow CrossFit, when they were their best and all together, I would have paired up with these 3 girls against any 3 CrossFitters in the country, and they would have held their own. In fact, if you look at what they did at the team level, when it was just those 3 girls, they generally finished in the top 3. Really strong performers, and I was just fortunate enough to be there. I would say as soon as I got off that team, they got another real CrossFitter on there, and they actually did pretty well and almost made a podium spot. Whereas I was with that squad in 2013, we finished 21st, but it was cool to be there. It was a fun experience.
So let's transition over to weightlifting. So you're getting more into weightlifting. You're competing, at national meets. I'm assuming all around the country because we don't do much in Hawaii. Yeah, talk about weightlifting. Your transition to weightlifting while I think managing CrossFit at the same time, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, my first meet was in Hawaii. I actually qualified for the American Open. I think the year the total there was 250. I totaled 253, and I think it's an 85 that would have got me in. I forget what year that was. Maybe 2011 or 12. Something like that, maybe 13, didn't go. But actually, Hawaii, I think it's Mel Mel Miyamoto, they actually have a strong weightlifting community out there. They do a really good job. I think they have some masters records out there. But yeah, that's where I did my first couple meets out there in Hawaii. Got the taste for it, liked it. Actually met Rob Blackwell. He came out to our gym and trained with us, and met him at a meet and was able to touch base with him. And I think Nicole Lim, which was cool. But yeah, out in Hawaii is still where it sparked it. A lot of my own competitiveness after college football was all sparked in Hawaii through CrossFit. And then when we moved off Hawaii, when I wasn't around the same talent, and again with the family expanding, and actually, my big thing is I'm at home with the kids most of the time. So a lot of things that I do remotely or coaching wise is all with the internet, with the thought of taking care of them first. So that's another interesting thing we can get into later. But when we cycled back to the mainland here, that's when I got into working with a gentleman named Stephen Powell out of Columbia, South Carolina. It's the first time I really traditionally just did weightlifting, and was able to attend the nationals in Salt Lake City and in Dallas as 85. And that's where that started.
Tell me about like when you're first starting off as a weightlifter. How is that different from being a CrossFitter? Because yesterday, I have a confession to make. I tried CrossFit as a weightlifting purist for the first time in 2017, because I've actually done it before unintentionally. and no, I thought it was an amazing experience. I'm actually writing a blog about my experience doing CrossFit, and why I think every weightlifter should at least try CrossFit at least once. But tell me, more about your experiences from transitioning from, being primarily a CrossFitter to now strictly a weightlifter. Like, how is that different? First thing is you got more time on your hand because we take a lift and then we sit down.
That's right. Well, that was something that Coach Powell had to really hammer home with me. And that's the big thing you see from a lot of CrossFit athletes. And it's funny, you can, even as an adult, you can think back to, I can't believe I said what my dad told me, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I sound like my father. But it's funny, I'll say things to athletes and I sound like Coach Powell, where it's like, sit down, calm down, rest, focus, that type of stuff. So getting into that weightlifting mentality, and to be honest, in the beginning, I didn't understand what the point was. Why am I doing this? Why do I need to sit and calm down between reps? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do the work. Well, the fact is, weightlifting is different, because once you get into that competitive environment, especially at the national level, goodness, there's a lot of time in between reps, and
yeah, man,
very hard to maintain that high intensity for a 90-minute session, especially even at that national competitive level. You need to monitor your adrenaline, I guess. You need to stay focused, know how to turn it on and off. And I think that was the biggest fault. And I think that that's something that anyone coming into weightlifting from CrossFit, it's pretty common. Find a way to manage your rest periods, whether you're going to sit down and you have a breathing routine. A lot of people will go to the phone. Find a way to focus on what's going on in between. I think is the biggest takeaway that anyone coming from CrossFit into weightlifting could use.
Definitely, man. You got to get into that Zen, serene kind of area to where you're neither completely cool, but you're not over the top and rush with adrenaline.
Lifting calm or lifting well is what I'll call it. And I think when you can look to a guy who we recently interviewed for our podcast is a guy named Phil Sabatini. Super nice guy.
Oh man, Phil is the man.
Phil's awesome. He tells a story on our podcast where his first meet, he's just ramped up in the corner, like seething, pissed off. What the heck's going on?
Yeah.
And sustain it. Yeah. He had to figure out how to listen to the barbell drop, get into the rhythm of the meet, that kind of stuff. So it's something everyone has to go through. It's really hard to amp it up and keep it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a long time. You know what I mean? You have to manage your rest, and you have to manage the shuffle of a meet, especially when you're competing at a high level.
Definitely. Well, you talked about you're doing some things online and remotely. Why weightlifting? Why is weightlifting part of that repertoire or part of, your ingredient list to help your clients become better athletes?
Well, it stems with that's what I like to do, right? So we do have some folks that I'll help, but generally I'll help them with general fitness. I'll even program CrossFit, or even I'll have a few athletes that will send me some video to help them with the open and teach them how to cycle. But I really don't enjoy the programming aspect of CrossFit or weight loss as much as I really like to help people increase their total. It's for pure selfish reasons, but it's just what I enjoy more. And honestly, I think the product's better because I'm just into it more. You know what I mean? Weightlifting is just, again, going back to the original story, it's the reason I played college football. It's the reason I was a good CrossFitter. I had a knack for being not only moving the barbell and moving decent loads, but I was always fast. And
Yeah.
I could express movement really well. I'm generally pretty coachable in the terms of picking up different little skills here and whatnot. I think I have I think I have a decent physical intelligence, and that just goes back to always playing sports as a kid. I generally pick things up, and it's just, again, selfish reasons. It's what I like, so that's what I coach.
More people should be like you, man. Like you
Yeah.
should just be unafraid to follow and do what makes you happy. I mean, people are out here doing jobs every day that they hate. You know, they wake up every day and they're sick to their stomach. And until you can, take the cuffs off and just be your own man, find a way to deliver something that people love and enjoy. And then you'll find a way to make a living through that crossroad. Somewhere in between that's the sweet spot.
Well, and it's cool because it also affords you the opportunity to collaborate with other people. Like there's
Yes.
a guy that I've met through the podcast, a gentleman named Travis Jewett, who's a power lifter. And we
Yeah.
kind of have the same thing going where this kind of dad strong mentality, but he's the dad strong power lifter and I'm the dad strong weightlifter. And it's fun. We have back and forth. Hey, Travis, how do you get strong? Okay. And then, hey, Joe, I got this guy off this jerk. How do I fix that? Right. And then it opens up for other collaborations. Like the guy on my podcast, Danny Matei, he's a PT, right? So we all have our own little specialty. And man, if I can focus on my specialty, I'll have a good product. And then if I see a problem that's out of my zone, because I know weightlifting is my wheelhouse or what I like to do, I'm not afraid to turn it over to another specialist, right? So I think it's this abundance thing, this collaborative thing. It's this team mentality that I loved about football so much, to just have people around you that make your whole product better. And ultimately, through those conversations, you get better and learn more, rather than trying to do every little thing and kind of doing it half-assed, right? So I think follow your passion, and goodness, don't be afraid to collaborate and ask questions, with people in other specialties. I think that's really important.
Now we're going to get specifically into two more things. Number one, weightlifting and your business, and training your clients. So you have a lot of unique experiences here that people can benefit from. So I hope you don't mind giving away a couple nuggets to help a couple, new and up and coming coaches. This is what we're all about, just giving away this knowledge that shouldn't be esoteric, that everybody should know to help make our sport and more popular. So the first thing I want to know is, how does weightlifting help your business, Joe?
Yeah, well, my business is kind of, it's training, right? So weightlifting is the business, I guess. And I think the first thing that anyone who wants to go down that road of coaching needs to understand that, and it's okay. Everything that we do is educational. I want to teach first and foremost, but also when it comes down to it, there will be a point where it's okay that if you're a good coach to be compensated for your time in that regard. My own personal experience hiring coaches, like right now I've decided, getting ready for Masters Nationals, to bring on Leo Totten to help me out. I can't see everything in my own movement, right? So reached out to Leo through Phil, because what he's doing with grooming coaches and athletes is pretty interesting. So to even learn in that regard is important. So I think the first thing that you have to do, if this is what you want to do, is realize that it is a business, and that's okay. And that was a really hard thing for me to do, where you almost feel like this exchange of money for your service kind of taints the process. But honestly, I think there's some value in doing that. For one, once you start to treat it that way, you are motivated to make that relationship work because you want to justify the cost. You know what I mean? Some things like that. So you can go down, we'll go down this conversation a little bit more with some more specific questions, but I think the first thing that anyone needs to do is, weightlifting is the business, and I think it's okay to charge people for your time, because we all know, this, it's a lot of work doing what you're doing. Programming, spending time on the Skype, working with people personally, dealing with their issues, all kinds of stuff like that. A lot goes into what's going on.
Definitely. I was just telling my wife the other day that personal training, for example, or things like CrossFit, they have to evolve and grow in order to be successful. You can't just be like, I'm a personal trainer, I focus on fat loss. It's like, dude, you have to be well-rounded. You got to know a little bit about everything. And then going towards something specifically as CrossFit, it's like you can't just be a CrossFit gym anymore. You have to be more than that. When I travel around the world and I lift at different gyms, and most of the time it's a CrossFit gym that I'm dropping in, let's take like CrossFit in Bangkok in Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Muay Thai facility, a yoga studio, and a CrossFit gym. And it's like, that's what you got to do.
Well, we've talked to a guy too on our podcast, Chris McNamara. He runs Evolution Athletics in Southern Pines, North Carolina. He's a great guy to talk to, a former Special Forces guy, and through that he's been educated in a lot of different things. But his gym, and this is what you're seeing with a lot of really successful things, it's kind of a co-op where you have the CrossFit side, but then you have the physical therapist, and you have the massage therapist, and you have the nutritionalist. You have the guy who comes in on Wednesday with the food.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got this part. You have this interesting co-op where fitness is the center, where people can go here and there. Because eventually, in my own experience with CrossFit, CrossFit isn't going to be enough for most people. Everyone generally reaches a place where the effort and the hard work ends up diminishing. There's diminishing returns with that hard work. You can't just work so hard. So my analogy, CrossFit is only going to make you at the end more of what you already were, just like it did for me. I was a power athlete, got into CrossFit. I ran that road as hard as I could, and then I was a power athlete again. And I saw a lot of folks who were triathlon stars or whatnot, and then at the end of CrossFit, they started running triathlon again. And I think that's okay. And I think as a gym owner, I think you need to prepare for that. And old school CrossFit gyms, like even CrossFit San Francisco, look at what they were doing. They turn out a lot of different folks. You got Diane from Barbell. You saw the gymnastics coming out of their thing. So, yeah, I think you're 100% right. It's got to be more than CrossFit.
So let's talk about services and tools. And this is, I mean, like, what are you using to coach people online? What kind of tools are you using in your day-to-day to stay on top of things? We're in this big, tech kind of bubble and time and era where we're doing everything on our mobile phones, our iPads, our laptops. We're on the go. We're at dinner and we're taking payments, or we're sending programs, right before bed. So what tools and services are you using to get the job done on a daily basis?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is I went to the internet pretty reluctantly. I was always big on the weight room. I liked being around people. I loved the community of CrossFit, and I didn't think you could get that through the internet, but you actually really can. And I had a cool little club in Columbia that I ran out of my garage. And at the end of it, when we moved up here to West Point, we're in West Point right now, we had to kind of turn that over to some other kiddos who were going to try and run that club out of a CrossFit gym. And that was it was good and bad. I was happy to help turn the club over to some other kiddos and give my athletes other homes. But it was a bummer for me because I was like, you work hard to build something up. So knowing that I was going to move around a bit, and, case in point, here in June, we're moving to Tacoma, Washington. We move around quite a bit.
Yeah. It's because of your wife's work with the Army, right?
Yeah, she's again active duty physical therapist in the Army. But the cool thing is I can pack the internet up and we're still going. So
that's right.
There's going to be no loss there. So that's why I went to the internet. So what do I use? I do a couple different things. So obviously you can program and send that through email, whatnot. So you can do video reviews. I utilize Google Drive quite a bit to share videos and set up different personal things. I have a private Facebook group, which is cool. So with the private Facebook group, you can just, you let people in who you want. We keep it pretty small in that regard. And I'll try to have a different 24 to 40 hour response time on any videos that are posted there. So that's one route that's pretty simple. In terms of what I use to schedule payments and private sessions are generally through Skype. Skype is a cool service that I think is pretty easy to use. Most folks can get on a Skype account.
Yeah, everybody's had if you've had a Hotmail, Gmail account, you have a Skype.
so that's helpful. And then there's other tools for that even like what you're turning me on to Zencaster, which is cool for recording audio. So there's always better stuff that you can look into. But Skype is pretty inexpensive. You don't have to build a huge site. Another tool that I'll use for kind of processing things is I'm on Front Desk, which is helpful because they have a cool scheduling deal. So it's cool as I can put up my schedule, and then my athletes who have purchased private sessions, they schedule based on what I put up there. The other cool thing about Front Desk is I try to do everything on a monthly basis where I'm not chasing people down. So one of the ways to, I'm not a money guy. I don't like to handle money. I don't like to ask money. I don't even like to, I'm always hesitant. I'm not to do that. So what I'll do is get it set up in the beginning, and then with something like Front Desk, it's just automatic withdrawals. And then
there you go.
I just ask my people, just give me give me 48 hours if you need to back off for whatever reason, and I'm really cool with it, and it's generally worked out. So there's all kinds of stuff. Utilizing social media and what's out there on the internet right now, it's really, I'll tell you what, man, I'm training this guy who's a UK soldier. I can't believe it. He found me through the podcast, and this he's from the UK, and right now he's in the States doing whatever, but in June, he's going back overseas. And we're going to work together. I mean, I even have a soldier who, while he was in Afghanistan, was sending me video. It's unbelievable. And the cool part, more than just reviewing and coaching them, you get to know them. You know, we're always communicating through email. Even to this day, I'm floored at the personal relationships that I've developed with folks that I've never even shaken their hand. You know what I mean? But I would call them friend. You know, I'd give them a hug if I saw them, and I think it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome, and especially like the tie-in with your wife and you guys' background with the armed forces. I know that helps create a even stronger bond from the beginning, or some kind of barrier of entry trust.
Well, yeah, and I think that's with everything. So you go back to why I got into weightlifting, because that's what I like to do. And I think anyone who's going to get into a coaching business or personal training business, I think in the beginning you go into this thing like you have to prove how good you are. And I don't even think that's it. You just have to be who you are, right? Tell your story. Let people into your life, because ultimately the more you learn about your clients, the more they learn about you, the stronger the relationship's going to be. Everyone's going to be happy. You'll be able to tell each other the truth, right? Rather than just giving me lip service through an email, telling me all the things you think I want to hear. No, I want to know what turns you on, what's going on. So a lot of the things that we do is just, it's finding ways to communicate and learn about each other. And the more we can all be ourselves, even in this remote setting, and relay our experiences to one another, the coaching's going to improve and everything's going to get better.
That's awesome, man. Any specific programs that you're using to, Google Drive, Skype, front desk, but anything you're using as far as programming? I know it's a big thing right now that people are, sending programs back and forth, getting some feedback, sending videos. Are you using any specific thing, or are you just collaborating with all these tools?
Yeah, right now, I'm not really super tech savvy, so I'm open to anything that you have that you're using. But no, everything's through Google Drive, so I'll set up Excel sheets through there. I'll set up simple Word Google documents through that. The cool thing is it's pretty trackable, because what you'll end up seeing is, especially if you're getting into video sharing, the files get pretty big, right? So you have all these external hard drives, and all of a sudden, the wifey and I just got a second laptop, and we had to get hard drives and do all this different stuff. The files are big, and honestly, Google's the way to go, especially if you're going to be remote. As much as we move around, I can always access that drive on my phone, which is pretty cool. So it's always there in the internet space. I've just had success with that. So whatever tool you're going to use there, because the logistics of that it takes up a lot of space, right? So, and then in terms of just do you mean programming in terms of just the technical aspect of writing it out, or are we talking about tools that I'm utilizing to develop programs?
I'm thinking tools that you're just writing it out. So you're sending it out to me. I'm your client. We're using whatever I use, or you're using something standard with everybody?
It's all email. It's all email.
Okay.
Google through that. I know some folks. I know when you get hooked up with the OPEX model, I know that they'll have different deals where their athletes are even doing like their own particular blogs to their coach, right? So there's all kinds of ways to go. To me, I'm still a bit of a business and development with that. So right now I'm just utilizing the tools that I know how to use, right? But I'm always 100% open to what the folks are doing and using and applying some of that stuff. Anything that's going to make it efficient where I can focus on coaching, I'm always up for trying.
Yeah, definitely. So let's transition into training clients. Thanks for sharing, what you're using and how you're doing it with so many people across the world. Let's talk about, in-house. Do you do any in-house, or is it all in-house, or is it in-house and online training as well?
Well, I used to do the in-house stuff, and that started to end up being pretty rough, because as much as we liked it, we'd invite people to bring their kids, and then all of a sudden, the way things are working with me in the life, I like to keep things completely remote, because then I'm in control of when I access it, right? Generally, within a 24-hour period, I can look at a video, I can respond to a message, I can hit an email, right? Especially with a little bit of discipline. When I'm really good on my schedule, and, for instance, my 2.5-year-old just decided, I guess she must know that Masters is coming up, because as I've ramped up my training, she's decided to not sleep through the night. But
Oh
before
yeah.
that was going down, I was getting up at 5 in the morning, and my first, I'd do my little routine. I'd sit down at the computer for the first 90 minutes of the day before the kids woke up, and I'd hammer out emails and hammer out what was going on in the Facebook group. So
Man, that's the perfect time.
yeah, discipline in that regard was great. And then the kids wake up and you roll through it and you get going. So what I do mostly in-house is that's where I do my educational kind of videos. So through the YouTube
Okay.
page, what I do
Okay.
in-house is I kind of set the garage up kind of like Coach Bergner style. It was cool when we were at 808. We got CJ Martin was our coach, but when we would
Okay.
go to visit him in San Diego, we would go to Coach Bergner's gym. And it's kind of like a museum, right? So I was like, I want to do that. So we set up the Joe's Barbell gym, and what I'll do is that's where I shoot the educational video. So all the in-house stuff is that's where I'm teaching. Yeah, no live clients.
You see so many people doing unique things. I remember when online coaching was first becoming a thing. I would say it was about maybe 2013. You would start to see people do some online things, and one of the first people that I saw was Glenn Penlay, and he was throwing out some program like, look, if you're interested, send me an email. I need this kind of person, this beginner, this age kind of thing. And it was interesting to watch and see other people. You see, some folks like Diane Fu, and then you start to see lifters catch on. It's funny how you'll see. I didn't expect it to come from like within, I guess, but it was a no-brainer. I didn't expect it to be like, a guy, Clinton Finlay would be who we would refer to as an old guard, one of those old guys like, like that. But he actually has a really open mind when it comes to training and understanding different people. And then you see somebody from the CrossFit side take it on, and then now we're trying to catch up, and now it's quite normal to work with, like let's say if Kendrick Ferris is having a team or something like that, that would be normal. That's just how we do it.
Right. And when you think about entrepreneurship, or when you think about people who really have, I guess as Tim Ferriss might even call it, the new rich, these are people who utilize their time efficiently so they can have more time to do other things. This isn't to say that they're not working hard, but where weightlifting and remote coaching really work well is I can write a program in my own time. My weightlifter can do it in their own time, and then I can respond to it in a timely manner in my own time, and it's convenient for anybody. And to be honest, when I was trying to do live coaching, and when I was trying to do it with in-person coaching, it was always hard, especially as, again, going back, my kids are the priority. If my kids have a runny nose, if my kids are sick, if for whatever reason, excuse my language, but if they've shat the bed, I'm going to have to go clean that. So I found really quickly that it was a disservice to the product, because there was lots of times where I was like, I got to put it on hold because I had this emergency and I have to attend to that first. That's the priority. So I think it gives me the opportunity to do better product, and it gives me an opportunity to provide a better service. And the other thing is weightlifting is great for it, because if you're savvy with the phone anymore, you can really do great cut-ups. You can get the 5-second video, cut it up, make a YouTube link, and send it off to your coach. And it's a great product, and they see everything. So, man, if you're technically savvy, you know how to use your phone, generally do most of my work on the phone. Like I did a quick cut-up for Leo. It was a 5-minute cut-up that summed up 90 minutes of training, and me and him were having an easy back and forth on it. It was all done from my phone, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm getting better, I would say, with some skills that I used to have that I learned a while ago. One is that I'm taking an online Excel course, Microsoft Excel, and the reason being is that I want to make some programming faster and more auto-populated. So I put in the numbers here, load up the functions, and boom, here's my 12-week course or my 12-week program. And I had this course where I bought from, I can't think of his website. AppSumo, that's what it is, AppSumo.
Okay.
So I bought a course from AppSumo for like $20. They're like, hey, we got this course up, lifetime membership. And it's been quite interesting, man, to relearn Excel. When you take some time off of something and it keeps updating, you get lost in the matrix somewhere, because this is a completely different program than when I learned in high school, man. So it's humbling. If you don't go that route, there are also other tools that people are using out there. But we're learning about every day. It was one that I learned the other day, and I don't want to plug anything. Nobody's paying me, but it's called Fitbot. It's basically, your all-in-one. It's like if you have a private, social media kind of or messaging system between you and your client. So you can post a program, the client can post videos, ask questions, and you guys can communicate, with your whole team on one app. And I know a lot of people are trying to do this, but I think Fitbot might be one that's handling it well, and it might serve you well to check that out, Joe.
Yeah, no,
I
that's
think
the
that's a really
one.
good service.
That's 100% the one that I think I say 100, and then I think. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure if I had to bet money on it, or if I had to make a little, yeah, I think that's the one that the OPEX folks use. And again,
Okay.
it's one-stop shopping where you can
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll have to look into that myself.
Another service that I'm going to use for our barbell club coming up here pretty soon is Push Press, pushpress.com. And those are some guys out in Cali. I've been working with them for a while. Actually, it started with, some advertising with OLIFT, and then I kept in touch. And then now I'm trying to set up for basically my gym management, my virtual gym management kind of system all out here. And so they're trying to get me set up because I'm in Hong Kong, and it's really cool, man.
Payment processing, things like that.
Yeah, they do payment processing through Stripe. They're handling check-ins, and people can, register for a class in advance if you post it. They can do invoicing, they can do payroll, they can do pre-sales. Say you got a cool t-shirt idea, but you don't know, how many you should order, 50, 100, that's a really arbitrary number. You could do a pre-sale, and then you can get all like, all right, I got 30 people who are interested. Let me order about 50 because I know some people are going to be interested later. Yeah, man, pushpress.com for you guys. Shameless plug, shout out to the boys at Push Press. We're trying to get me set up here, so just showing love.
No, I think it's all great stuff. I mean, in the sharing of it, I think is really helpful. Even some other things that we've used for the podcast. I think another one is to think about your email list, right? So you need a bit of a list generator, something like ConvertKit's a fun one where you can segment your group so you can do certain things. And when we've launched some ebook style programming, we've used a product called Samcart, which is cool. And what's cool about something like Samcart is you can actually do affiliate things where, if I was to sell a program and then if I wanted to kick it to your audience, it's cool there where you can share the fee and we can do an affiliation split there, and it's all handled in-house. So it's cool. I think the one thing to just worry about is you don't want to go down the rabbit hole of getting too many things, right?
Yeah. You got to pick something that works and just stick with it.
Yep.
You don't want to like, oh, I use this for my email and I use this for that. Like I have tech friends like that, and I'm like, dude, I don't know how you keep up with it. Like that's why Push Press was exciting to me because everything is in-house. I'm like, I want one program where we log into and we handle everything, and that's it. That's why it's appealing.
And the last thing that I like to do whenever I go into a new service, especially one that I'm going to pay for, is when I bring on a new service, thinking about it business-wise, this thing has to yield some type of return. So
exactly.
I'm going to spend X amount of dollars on a monthly fee to use X service, well, then that means I need to go out in the next month and get X amount of clients to justify it. So you can't just sit here and be this guy that's got, rack up hundreds of dollars worth of services that you're using, and all of a sudden
you're not getting in the green with it.
Yeah. Right. So that's another reason why I think it's cool to start slow with what you're doing, especially when you're in the beginning, right? Go slow and work it as you work with what you're comfortable with.
Definitely a big suggestion, and also utilizing everything free first. Don't be too crazy about paying for stuff. Like Google Drive is free to an extent of like, how much space they're going to give you. You got space on your hard drive. Like it's pretty doable. Like you're not going to fill up your whole Google Drive with Word documents. And like I said, utilize what's free until you need to pay for something, guys.
That's exactly right. Especially, like I said, we've gone back to it. We're the little businesses that I have on the side here, these little entrepreneurial things that I have, are all kind of hobbyist things that are connected to the passion of weightlifting. That I'm generating a little bit of a side income, and ultimately the goal for us is over the next 5-year period where wifey retires from the Army is to flip the script, where all of a sudden the Joe's Barbell can compensate for what she's doing. Because I know, looking at the horizon, the last thing that I want to do is have a boss. I've worked well with bosses and I've worked horribly with them. And as the more I learn, I understand, the less I know. But I also know that there's a way that I like to operate. I really like the freedom to do my own thing. So I have a bit of a 5-year plan to figure some things out where this thing does become real. So I think that's also cool to have that vision in mind too. So, connect it to your why, have your passion, and have a plan and figure out a way to just measure if you're making progress so you can make adjustments as you go.
In terms of coaching, what do you think that you're doing differently? What is one thing that you're doing differently? Not saying you're reinventing the wheel, but what is something that you're doing that's unique, that has that Joe flavor on it?
Cool. When I teach the movements, I generally try to teach concepts that are applicable in the beginning to all the movements, right? So rather than teach someone how to snatch or clean, I'm generally going to work on a concept called control first. And the other thing is, I'm more of a ground-based coach where I like to get that pull off the ground. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think a lot of the folks that I train are coming to me from a CrossFit setting. So they've all jumped under the barbell. They've all done top down. So when they come to me, I'm like, okay, we're going to have this kind of puppy in the dog collar moment where you're going to do things to some degree my way. So we're going to focus on being slow and controlled off the floor, and until you can master going from the break to your knee, we're not going anywhere else, right? So there's other little things that the football coach in me comes out where I'm going to assert my coachiness on this guy right away. So there's two. I like to coach big concepts. Control, we're going to talk about how to get low and then how to move fast, and then also the ground-based approach. I'm big on making that work. I think that it's important, and again, it's a reaction to the clients I'm seeing. I think maybe a third one, I'm getting a lot of older athletes, not older in a sense, but athletes who have come to me with coaching, and they have coaching baggage in ways they've done in the past. So I also will take a segmented approach to the initial teaching. Again, I kind of gave you one where I'm going to focus on getting the barbell to the knee. Well, once that's good, then we're going to go from the knee to the hip and blend this into a big movement. Even with something like a jerk, for instance, I'll segment that where, I'll put them in the dip and pause them there. And then I'm going to make them stand up nice and slow and controlled. And then I'm actually going to put them on their toes. And then we're going to drop down into a split. So I take a real segmented approach in the beginning to teaching each position. And again, it's a bit of a reaction to the athletes that I'm getting, because a lot of them have jumped into a CrossFit gym, and because the whiteboard says we're going to do 2 front squats and a jerk, well, that's what you're going to do. And they haven't had those details. So I'm pretty detail orientated. I think it's a slow process in the beginning, especially remotely, but man, it really pays off where it might be slow in the beginning, but that after we get through that initial hurdle, real nice movement starts to come out.
Let's talk about the planes of motion.
Okay.
You were discussing this. We were discussing this the last time we talked, and you were talking about transverse. Us weightlifters, we only move on, basically one plane of motion. You can argue 2, but definitely not 3. So can you talk about that transverse movement that you were mentioning?
Again, through collaboration, which is cool. And Danny is a physical therapist, and actually my background before this was PE, strength and conditioning. So you think about all these different things, right? And you can get into this deal where you're so sport specific that you forget about some of the
basic movements.
So when we're talking about bringing in some transverse plane movement or some lateral movement into what you're doing, it's as simple as like a like a medicine ball Russian twist, something like that, or movements in that regard, or some banded kind of just rotational series where lifts and plates and chops, that kind of stuff. Because what ends up happening is the barbell's interesting, and the human superpower, in my opinion, is we're great cheaters. The body's always going to find the easiest way to do it. So what ends up happening is one side can compensate for a weaker side, especially with the barbell. But when you get into these lateral loaded asymmetrical movements, and you get into these transverse plane movements, the body learns how to ground itself differently. You're rotating through, but still able to apply force through the ground. And I think when you start to do that, you don't want to do so much of it that takes away from the weightlifting. But if you can throw some things like that into your warm-up, you can throw some things like that into your cool-down or your auxiliary movements after the session, it's a great blend. And I think that that's something where a lot of athletes can benefit from. And it's something that through my collaborations with Danny, the Doc and Jock podcast and through my strength and conditioning background, man, we've seen a lot of benefit with that in our lifters.
Definitely. One of the things that I used to hate as an exercise until I learned, alternative methods to it was the Russian twist.
Yeah.
And I hate when I see people sitting on the ground, they're balancing on their tailbone, and they're throwing this kettlebell from left to right over the hip. And I'm like, dude, we can do this in such a better way to get a better benefit that you're trying to do here without like tweaking your back or something like that. So the one when I saw you doing the medicine ball alternating toss off the wall, yep. I was like, that's the one. And it's simple. It's very simple.
One of the reasons I was a decent teacher is I was a great thief. I used to walk around to the really old teachers and see what they were doing in their classroom to get the kids managed, and I'd steal it and I'd use it. And then I'd go to them and thank them for that, whatever. So you're always looking to thieve things, to steal things, and see what a coach is doing. But I think you should give some credit to it. One of the places that I get a lot of my transverse plane movement stuff from is there's two sources. Look to a guy named Pat McNamara. He's not to be confused with Chris, but he does this thing called Combat. I think it's Combat Training, but he's another Special Forces guy who posts a lot of cool transverse plane movements and cool plyometrics. And another one is he's a former PJ, or Resilient PT. His name is Doug Ketchigan, and he works out of Manhattan. I think he's involved with the gym where the Power Monkey stuff is based out of. The name of the gym escapes me, but it's Resilient PT, Green Feet PT on Twitter. But man, he posts some great kind of med ball variations, and it's great. And I'll be honest with you, if you want to get, if you don't think core stability is important in weightlifting, we'll have a 300-pound clean on you or crash on you. One of the things, you watch Chad Vaughn's clean and jerk attempt when he broke that American record, he doesn't go anywhere, right? And that doesn't happen by accident. You have to work those areas and isolate them a little bit. And that's the one thing that kind of gets me about CrossFit, where you forget about, there is a time and a place to isolate these regions.
Yeah.
And, that's one other thing that we really spend some time with in the programming that we give to our athletes.
Yeah, you can't be turned off from something that works, and you're wrong if you think that you don't need any core strength to do weightlifting. I mean, I think that's one of the number one things, besides, understanding proper movement and efficient movement, but definitely having a strong core when you have a big clean crash down upon you and, one movement or inch to the left, and that can be it. That can be a career.
Yeah, and I think Greg Glassman said it in one of his little articles. You want a core exercise, well, put 400 pounds on your back and strengthen your tighten up your belly. Sure, that's one way to do it, and there's going to be no stimulus that's going to replicate that. And even when we had Ursula Papandrea on our podcast, she talked about heavy weightlifters should lift heavy. There's going to be no stimulus that's going to, you're not going to be able to elicit that anywhere else but lifting heavy weights. But on the side, you do need to challenge the integrity of joints. You do need to challenge your core in different ways. And I think in the end, it builds better weightlifting. So I think adding that stuff in is really paramount.
Well, I want to wrap things up here, and I just want to ask you one more thing. Where can people find you online if they want to know more about Joe and reach out to you possibly?
Well, they might not want to know more about me. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a bit of a weirdo. I'm going to share everything with you. Got a bit of an Italian-Polish background. On the other half, my mother is this kind of Hungarian gypsy, so I don't know what she's going with. We're working that out. But Instagram, Joe's Barbell is where I do a lot of the stuff. And again, going back to tools, Instagram's one that I use a lot because you can plug all the other outlets through that. So I'm most active on Instagram at Joe's Barbell. You can catch a lot of cool stuff. Facebook, you can go to the Joe's Barbell page. They get a lot of that stuff on there too. The Joe's Barbell webpage, joesbarbell.com, is pretty cool, where we'll post some blogs and whatnot. And then the last one is the Doc and Jock podcast. It's the one thing that I really like to do is podcast, and through the Doc and Jock podcast, we put out a weekly release that's a big release with a gentleman like yourself that you were on. And every Friday we do a short where Danny and I will do some actionable kind of 20 minutes or less, go do this. So check out the Doc and Jock podcast, putting out cool stuff. And I would say anyone out there, find the content you like to do and put that out consistently and as much as possible, because content's going to be king. It's going to give you a voice. It's going to let people see your voice. And honestly, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. You got to start somewhere.
Well, this has been awesome, Joe. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the podcast, man, and just sharing, your experiences, what you know, and hopefully we've helped somebody and inspired somebody to take it further and help our sport in weightlifting.
I hope so. I mean, and here's the cool thing. Next time I come on, it'll probably be all different. All totals matter, right? So let's get after it, guys.
That's right. That's right. Thanks, Joe.
Yep. Take care, gang.